Hey everyone, welcome to edX Pixel Expo 8 monthly webinar global webcast October series happening on every 8th of the month. And once again, thank you everybody for joining us on this Friday morning as we always do every month to come together and convene over a united cause that is our love for diving and also for the ocean. So in conjunction with Octopus Day, we would like to celebrate by knowing one interesting fun fact on this magnificent creature before we actually start with this session, all right? So I guess everybody knows about octopus, but I guess the only thing that we don't know is that how old they are. And by some research, it says that the oldest known octopus fossil belonged to an animal that lived some 296 million years ago and during the Carboniferous period. So this specimen belongs to a species named Polsapia and is on display at the Field Museum in Chicago. So, well, I guess that is one of the fun fact that we get to know about octopus today. But stay tuned for the rest of the day to know a little bit more about what are the interesting things that you get to learn about the octopus. All right, so back to our session. Kicking off the very first one for this month was actually inspired by the scuba diver issue 05/2020 called The World of Tech Diving. And it's actually, there's this one particular article that says 101 tips on becoming a better tech diver. And so today we are going to deep dive into the topic of backmount and also sidemount. So let me just introduce to you the panel speakers for this session. And first of all, I'd like to introduce all the way from the US is Commander Vishwanath Rajan. Hi, Vish.
Hi, Nora. I'm representing India as well. more than the US right now.
Yes, that's right. So Vish is actually a technical and public safety diving instructor, founder, and also a director of Scuba Evolution India. So next in the speaker panel is, of course, Yvonne Press. She's from Germany, but she's now in Bali. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi.
So Yvonne is the director of Dark Horizon Diving. But to know her a little bit more, I'm just going to let you guys get to know her a little bit more during the session later. The next speaker panel is, of course, Andy Davis from UK, but he is currently now in Subic, Philippines. So Andy is actually an independent technical sidemount rack instructor for Scuba Tech Philippines. Hi, Andy, how are you? I think there's some technical glitch at the moment, but he will be back, I am sure. The next panel, hi, Andy.
I'm good. Nice to be here.
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. And of course, our next panel is Andy Yu from Hong Kong. And he is currently now in Croatia. And he's also regional head of Greater China, examiner, recreational, technical, OC, CCR instructor trainer, and also a full cave instructor. Hi, Andy, how are you?
Hi, it's Edmund. How are you? I'm calling
talking
from Croatia.
I'm having this early morning effect as well. Okay. Last but not least, is our moderator, of course. He is James Costello from UK, but currently in Singapore. And he is, of course, RAID Examiner Director, Diving Solution for Asia, and also Director for RAID SMB. I'll let you know. I think I'm going to leave it to James to tell us a little bit more about what's SMB. But right now, I think I'm going to hand over the session to James. James, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all good. So, yeah, today the topic of our conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about Backmount and Sidemount. So I guess for those people watching, they're fairly familiar with Backmount because it's the kind of the common thing for diving. But maybe a little less familiar with Sidemount and some of its benefits and how it can relate back to Backmount and that kind of thing. So let's maybe start off amongst all of us. We've all, from what I know about everybody, we've all been diving Sidemount for some time, so we're fairly experienced. So maybe we'd all like to share a bit of a memorable moment, you know, be it a good moment or a bad moment, but something memorable about using Sidemount compared to using Backmount. Yvonne, shall we start with you, ladies first?
Okie dokie. So when I first got a chance to try Sidemount, it was one of those trials offered in a swimming pool, and I just spent a week dialing in my twin set diving. So I was a little bit dubious about doing something different, just because I thought I've just spent all this time and all this effort to get the one thing right. Now I'm going to potentially throw it all overboard. And I remember putting the harness on and starting out with one tank only and sort of diving into that pool, and it just felt so natural. And that memory's kind of stuck, that there was just a natural stability and balance, even with just the one tank. And adding the second tank only made that better, really. So it was one of those aha moments where I was like, oh, okay, this really could be a bit of a game changer. That was about 6-7 years ago now. And since then, it's only really grown. It's only become better. And I've recently turned it into Sidemount CCR diving as well, which had the same initial feeling. Obviously, then there comes tweaking and working the details out. But yeah, that very first moment was a really good moment and a really memorable one as well.
Great, yeah. It's always very memorable making a switch from back to side, right?
Yep.
Vish, would you like to share anything to share?
For I had kind of an amazing experience when I learned to dive Sidemount, and similar to Yvonne, it was just perfect, you know, a new change from Backmount to Sidemount. But I really learned to dive Sidemount when I started diving in the caves. When I came to the US for my cave course is when I actually dialed everything in properly and figured out that what we do sometimes and call Sidemount is, you know, needs a little bit more refinement when you do overhead diving, and, you know, just the way you streamline your gear and, you know, manage it better. Even though I was diving Sidemount for about 3 years by then, I kind of developed it even a little bit more. And for me, that's one takeaway, that you can never stop learning Sidemount. There's always something to do.
Yeah, I think that's a fact of life, right? Never stop learning, not just for Sidemount. So, Edmund, how about you?
Well, I started Sidemount probably about almost more than 10 years now. And of course, the most memorable moment is when we are diving Sidemount and in the caves, and when you're able to actually go into very tight spots and sometimes maybe too tight. So there could be some really scary moment when you were diving Sidemount in the cave and you know, trying to squeeze through places and obviously there are like scary moments and that where you may be too tight some places. And I'm a really advocate of Sidemount diving. So as most people already know and or seen me, and I've been doing Sidemount rebreathers and teaching Sidemount rebreathers and a lot of other stuff. So well, you see me, and I'm usually on Sidemount because it's great for traveling. And I'm currently in Croatia and in the Divesoft Liberty Summit, and I'm diving my Liberty Sidemount and doing all the recs and really good for me.
Cool. You have to be a little bit insane to go into caves, right, Edmund? I think that's a fair comment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be slightly insane to do, but maybe that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's well, I would say insane, but Sidemounts can opened a door for you to go to many places that were you thought, you all of a sudden you have a lot of freedom going in to more space, tight spaces, and it's a great tool for doing certain things.
Yep, I agree. It is a tool that we have in our toolbox. So how about just sharing some things that you like from Sidemount compared to Backmount? No, it's gonna, you prefer to use Sidemount because compared to Backmount. But maybe we start with you, Vish.
I've been diving Sidemount almost exclusively unless I'm teaching a Backmount class. And for me, also the only other time I would use Backmount now is when I have, like I'm doing a deep trimix dive and I need the real estate in my bag to carry extra tanks, just to if I don't have a place to stage them. And Sidemount really in open water is pretty good for about, I would say, 5 tanks comfortably. When you go beyond that, you want to move it around a little bit, or maybe get a rebreather. Like I now have a dive right rebreather, which I'm diving Sidemount, and it's amazing. It's the chest mounted Sidemount rebreather. The versatility is that you can use it as a back mount rebreather as well. But like I said, it's more about having the streamline and having the comfort of being able to get into tiny spaces, like Edmund said. And I mean, small anecdote, I was doing my full cave class and there was one restriction which we had to go through, and Ed Sorensen was my instructor, and we went through the restriction, and this is in Jackson Blue. And when we ended the dive, everything, he asked me, how do you like the restriction? And I was like, what restriction? It just didn't seem like a restriction because I was streamlined in Sidemount and it seemed comfortable enough to go through without, it was not a no tank restriction. Let me know for that. But it felt pretty awesome because it had the streamline. It was balanced because, as Sidemount divers, we keep playing around with, hey, it's a little bit, few inches up, it's a few inches down, it's a couple of angles. So, I mean, I prefer Sidemount because you can play with it in the middle of a dive, at the end of a dive, between dives, and change around stuff, and make a small change in your leash, small change in where you clip it, and things like that, which in Backmount takes a whole lot of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Far easier to adjust your Sidemount while you're wearing it compared to a pair of twins on your back, right? Edmund, how about you? Well, anything that you like for Sidemount over Backmount?
Well, it's definitely more. I would say Sidemount, you have more streamline, so it's also more balanced. So you would feel very sort of good when you have everything set up right, and it's great for traveling because your luggage tends to be slightly less, and you can pack the gear, and doesn't matter where you go, and you will have the same setup and you can do many dives, like recreational, technical. You can do cave wrecks. You can do. It doesn't really matter, and you just have the same gear, and it's really, really easy. So diving Sidemount, it's kind of like a lifestyle for me. So you would go, and you can go anywhere, and you're able to dive many places with the same setup. And versus Backmount, you would probably sometimes single tank, twin tank. You would need different gear, and versus Sidemount, you just dive. And also another advantage is sometimes you're doing like just places where you're recreational or live aboard. You go to any places and you can just drop 2 tanks, and you would have more air than a single tank. And some places may not have the twin tanks for you, and you're just able to dive any way that's available to you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely agree. Travel friendly and flexibility. That's what I love about it. Yvonne, how about you? What do you love for Sidemount? And
Well, a lot of the things Vish and Edmund have already mentioned, the flexibility, the balance, the stability. But I'm going to bring in entries and exits. So where I am, a lot of the diving we do involves a shore entry, a shore exit, or a boat loading directly onshore. Now, when you have waves, then it becomes much easier to handle single tanks in and out, to make a chain of people and move them, or even to lift something up above your head. You know, try that with a twin set. I know some of us can, but I can't. So this kind of handling loading is easier. But one of the things Edmund mentioned, that you can pretty much just go anywhere that has basic tanks, ideally with a DIN fitting on the valve. And you can extend your diving, so you can get that extra time. You can plan a decompression dive, because all you need is your basic tanks, and you need maybe one more or two more, rather than having to rely on twin sets, which are more specialist. It's more of a commitment for a dive shop to say, I'm going to stock twin sets, I'm going to have those valves, than to say, okay, I'll have normal tanks available, Sidemount divers come and they can make it work. So it facilitates really advancing your diving, advancing the diving in an area, and allowing you to do a bit of exploration.
Yeah, very true, very true. So how about the things that you don't like about side mount compared to back mount? Edmund? There must be bad things.
Well, when you really advocate for side mount, you just kind of learn to live with things that you might not be as simple or easy for when you're diving side mount. So adjustment is very important. How you get used to getting in and out of water. If you're on the boat, if it's strong current, if you are getting in and out of the water, if you're diving a boat or on the shore, it could be difficult, but not impossible. And obviously there's a lot of time like I've done shore dive, you have many tanks, and if the terrain is not so easy to walk in and out, and it could be a bit challenging, because you will need to carry these tanks and you have to strap them on, and you will have to put it in and get in and out of the water. It can be overcome, but sometimes it could be slightly different, and people might not understand how you dive it. So because most of the time I would prefer clipping the tank once I'm in the water versus having the tanks on and jump in. So it takes extra awareness and steps, and you need to get in and try to be efficient getting up in the water. So it could be challenging for some beginners. And when I do side mount, I usually mean 2 tanks. So because, well, what's the point, right? You can have 2, why dive 1?
True. More is better, right? Isn't that
so? The logistic is slightly different. You have to think ahead of time and how you want to do it, and you need to practice, and you have to be very self-sufficient. So it does take a lot of practice and training. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Edmund. Vish, what are your feelings? What do you not like so much about side mount compared to back mount?
How to get rid of my back mount equipment? No, well, it's, like I said, I needed to teach, but yeah, it's a huge investment in terms of having both sets of gear. I mean, even if, especially as an instructor, and I'm sure as instructor trainers as well, you'll feel the same, having multiple sets, because there would be students who come in and then you want, especially as an instructor trainer level, I feel that your instructors, when somebody says, hey, I'm a tech instructor, they should be comfortable to be teaching any configuration that they need, that the course can be run in. And while yes, there is always room for specialists, but that I would leave as a diver level. But so for me, that's one of the things where sometimes to continue having a side mount what should I say, mindset sometimes affects when you're teaching back mount, because when you're trying to clip on a stage, you want it to be as streamlined as possible, and you want it sides not just slung, but you want it side mount secured, not hanging around, not moving around. And it's just, I think over time, most of us have developed that habit as well, to stage cylinders even when you're driving back mount in a side mount streamline. I wouldn't call it a configuration, a standard streamline. And also side mount requires a little bit more of, like constant adjustments, which in a back mount, you maybe forget about it, just do it and leave it and not think about how you feel or how you look, because, hey, it's a lot of work to move those things around. But in side mount, because you want to move things a little bit, half an inch here, half an inch there, everybody has a screwdriver and a tape measure with them. And, if you're wearing undergarments that are too big under your dry suit, or if you're wearing a wetsuit, you want to change how your waist belt moves. So it's that little bit of comfort of being able to move things inside mount is also something which worries me a little bit, because there's always constant niggling in my mind that I can change this a little bit. It's that's my peeve, so to say.
Right. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Comes back to your comment. Never stop learning, right? So it is tweaking and playing. Yvonne, how about you?
I would say up to 4 tanks. I prefer side mount. Once it gets beyond 4, and I know Vish has just said 5. I think once it gets beyond 4 tanks, then there comes a question of why aren't we using that space on our back? I've tried 6 and I can move, but I feel like a very heavy helicopter with my fins behind me. And then it's a question of what are we doing? Are we just going, for example, to the entrance of a cave where we will drop 2 of the 6 tanks? Then, okay, perhaps then, we're just carrying them for 5 or 10 minutes. Leaving them behind, fair enough, side mount wins. But if we're looking at carrying them for the whole duration of the dive, a lot of the diving here in Bali is kind of like the background behind me. So it's a reef, so you wouldn't really be staging anything. You'd be taking everything with you. And then for me personally, beyond 4 tanks, it becomes a question of, okay, let's start using the space on our back. I agree with what Vish has said about side mounting stage tanks. I find whenever I go back to twin set, and I do it regularly, either because I have to teach or because I feel like I need to keep my skills fresh, you sling the stage and it moves and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Because you're used to it not moving. So slinging it in a side mount style, mounting it in a side mount style, for me makes it more comfortable because it just stays there and doesn't move. So that doesn't really say what I don't like about it. There's nothing that I really not like about it, sorry. But yeah, having to adjust things, but then if you want to get a back mount configuration really, really right, you will also be tweaking. You will also be finding new spaces to store things. It doesn't really end. It kind of applies to both. If you have that mindset of, oh, I could just get another little bit of an improvement, another little bit of an improvement. So that's probably more of a mindset thing that then ends up applying to both.
Okay, yes, yep, very true, very true. So obviously side mount is significantly different to back mount, just from a visual perspective for everybody can understand. So the importance of getting training for side mount compared to doing whatever open water or advanced or whatever other courses you've done, it's important, right? So Yvonne, what would you say about the importance of making sure that you get side mount trained and properly side mount trained?
It makes a difference between it being something really uncomfortable where your tanks are flying like wings somewhere in the same ocean as you are, and actually being side mounted. Of course, you can clip your tanks on the side of your normal BCD, but that's not side mount. The idea is that the tanks are in line with your body, that it is as streamlined, as balanced as it can be. Can you figure that out for yourself? Possibly, but it'll take you a lot longer, and you're simply not really getting the help that you could get if you took a course. Now, who are you going to take a course with? Somebody that dives Sidemount, because of the constant adjustments that we've been talking about, because of the little tweaking and things, you really want somebody that's going through that for themselves, that enjoys doing that, and that can give you the guidance to help you get there. That will also explain to you that if you're doing a course that's 4 or 5 days that just gets you started, that after that is when your learning curve really starts, when you started making adjustments for yourself, when you start learning, okay, this works for me, that doesn't work for me. So get trained with somebody that dives this configuration. If you're going to get your own equipment before the course, then make sure your instructor knows that and allows the time to help you set that up, because it does take longer than adjusting the straps of a normal BCD. I've taught courses where we spent the majority of day one just tweaking and messing about and tweaking and literally going from taking that harness out of the package, which is a little bit like Christmas, and figuring out what works. And then on day two, we're making some more adjustments because we've seen it in the water and taking it that bit further. So without training, it's not impossible to become a good side mount diver, but you're making your life hard and you're missing out, quite frankly. You're missing out on a lot of input and expertise and advice that you could have had, and that's well worth it.
Yes, yep, that's very, very true. Edmund, what's your thoughts on making sure that that people get proper training for side mount?
Well, a lot of people actually, you actually don't know how you actually is, how it looks until you're actually diving with someone that know what it should be. So when you're diving side mount, it's very important to have somebody else tell you exactly how everything are. And if you haven't learned it and you look at other people on YouTube or things, you might learn a thing or two, but you're doing it with an instructor. They will know exactly what you needed to adjust to get you where you want it. So having diving side mount, it is a lot of people don't realize that something is wrong with you, and until you're actually diving with someone who knows side mount. So my advice is always go with an instructor who dives side mount and know exactly what's needed to make an adjustment and make things easier. Because you go with someone with experience with side mount, it actually speed things up, and you can get you sort out and adjust it properly, and you get you to where you need to be, and the process can be sped up, and it's not actually difficult, and it's just a lot of concept, a lot of things, how you can adjust to make adjustment, why you need to make that adjustment. So your tanks are tight to your body, your balance, your weight, your trim, everything, it improves your diving skill. So diving side mount it's not just diving the side mount, because it's overall it's complete rework of your buoyancy control, and as well as your trim and everything of your equipment. So you would go much further if you go with an instructor that can point out exactly what you need and what you might be missing, and you have far better time to enjoy diving side mount much quicker.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Vish, how about from your side?
For me, any training that you want to do should be done with somebody who's qualified to teach it, and not just qualified to teach, but qualified to teach maybe a little bit beyond. So if you're learning to do open water, you learn from an instructor, not from an open water diver. So if you're learning to dive side mount with 2 tanks, hey, why not take a class from somebody who is a tech side mount instructor or beyond, because they will not be teaching you at their level. They'll be teaching you at the level that you need to learn, but have some more tricks and tricks of the trade, so to say, up their sleeve about an extra tank. And of course, it all goes back to maybe you'll come back for another class with them. But the whole thing is also that once you learn from somebody with experience, and what Yvonne and Edmund have been saying is just the same. We need students who come and learn from people with experience, not just YouTube and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, you have 5 days of diving, which is, let's say, 10 dives, and you're learning from somebody who probably has about, I would say, 500 to 1,000 or maybe 2,000 dives. So you go back with 10 dives of your experience, but you also have maybe 1,000 dives of experience of that instructor, and the small tips and tricks that they have, which they've imparted to you, which you will not get if you try it yourself. You will eventually, like Yvonne said, you will eventually get it, but it'll probably take you 10,000 dives to do that. Do you want to waste that time, or do you want to really learn? And that's one. The second thing which I have is try different harnesses. Everybody has one harness that they like, and it works for them. It might not work for you. You might want a different harness. The dive shop that you go to may and should have at least 1 or 2 prototypes to show you, hey, you know what, this is what I started with, and this is what I'm now using because of this reason, and you can try it out. A lot of places have trial equipment, trial harnesses and stuff like that. But like Yvonne said, if you've tried it before and you want to buy it outright, make sure that your instructor knows that you're going to do it, just because it's a, like, I don't want to repeat what Yvonne said. it's a big investment also, that you buy something, you don't like it after 10 dives, what are you going to do with it? So think about it, maybe try it out, definitely. And if you're doing different courses, hey, go to different instructors, pick up different little tricks from different people, and that helps. So yeah, I'm all for training different classes and from somebody who dives beyond your level, beyond the level that you're being trained for. That's something which is really important to me.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Vish. I think personally, I think it's very true. And I do know that with some of the harnesses, there's specific courses. Some brands have specific courses for them and that kind of thing. So selecting the right harness or what you think is the right harness in the beginning can also direct you to who you're going to learn from and how. But I think, as everybody's kind of said, that it's experience that's important. It's not just that I am a Sidemount instructor. You want someone with, you'll want to learn from their experience, not learn from the manual, right? That's what I guess instructors are sharing, particularly from a Sidemount perspective. So yeah, great. So kind of bouncing from the training side. So what things, what techniques and skills can we bring from Sidemount and we can bring to Backmount? So like everybody's talked about streamlining is very important. So the streamlining that we learn in Sidemount, how to translate that into Backmount. Can I get, if I learn Sidemount today, how does it change my Backmount tomorrow? Or am I just learning something today that I don't need to worry about when I go back to Backmount? Edmund, what do you have to say for that?
Well, however you want to dive it, I think Sidemount is not just Sidemount. It's about having, for example, your tanks are aligned to your body, so you have much more streamlined. When you are diving Backmount, you can still, like Yvonne said, you can have your stage and your decode bottles all Sidemount. Also, when you're diving Backmount, you can also dive when you are having a rebreather, and you can also have your tanks in a Sidemount on the bailout tanks and decode tanks. So it's kind of like a concept where you would pay a lot more attention about how all your tanks look and how it can be achieved so that they align to your body. which minimize drag, and when you are able to swim much more efficiently and more balanced. So even when you are diving backmount, that concept of the Sidemount, and as well as more complete balancing will improve you if you're diving side backmount or twin tanks, and you will be much more aware of that. Previously you might not realize that, or you can do these fine adjustments, because Sidemount, we always look into very detailed about how you want to adjust everything a little bit here and there. And so since after you do Sidemount, and you would be much more aware. And when you're diving, for example, rebreathers, I always, if you are doing a backmount rebreather, you can Sidemount your stage and bare oil bottles, much more streamlining, as well as you can even do backmount and Sidemount together, like on a bare oil rebreather, and you can have two rebreathers. And so the concept of Sidemount, it can still apply to many type of diving. So that is the total concept of what is Sidemount is. So a lot of people start doing it, and you would find yourself the tanks are not just hanging and then making noises. And when you are swimming with a lot of tanks, it bangs on each other. It's just really noisy. You wouldn't notice it until you are actually diving on a rebreather, and you would see your tanks are banging each other. And when you swim, it's hard to swim. And if you look at from a Sidemount point of view, if you can get everything right and balance left and right, also front to bottom, you could have a really good time diving any type of dive of configuration.
Right. Yeah. Vish, how about you? Oh, Andy's come back. Hello, Andy.
I'm here finally.
Vish, so maybe you can share something. So what techniques or ideas that we learn in Sidemount, how can we bring them into Backmount, or use them, or take advantage of them for the other half of the world when you're on your back?
So one of the key things, which Edmund said, was streamline, right? And I say that for every diver, not just backmount, twin set, even a single tank backmount recreational diver. We all, when we teach them, we try to teach them to be streamlined, have your SPG in a particular place, have your, alternate air source in a safe place and, easily accessible. But once you kind of understand how Sidemount works, bungee becomes your best friend, right? And, you learn to safely put gear on you without looking like a Christmas, looking like a Christmas tree, but not looking like a Christmas tree, if you know what I'm saying. There's no SMB and reel hanging out of your pocket or clipped on. It's on you, but it's snug with a bungee. Everything is accessible, but it's streamlined. And that's something which even open water divers, when I say open water divers, I mean single tank Backmount, recreational open water divers can take from Sidemount, is streamlining of gear, getting your body positioning correct, trim, getting good propulsion, and figuring out how not to, move like a plate in the water. The whole drag concept, which Edmund was talking about, is all about, having as small a profile you can to be efficient in propulsion. Now, can you take Sidemount and use it for twin sets? Exactly. What Yvonne said earlier about clipping, and what Edmund said about using it as for a backmount rebreather, your bailouts are technically Sidemount then. Do you want them hanging like, vertically on perpendicular to you, or do you want them, streamlined along your side? So it's just more understanding how streamline works, making bungee your best friend, or, having pouches, like I think the X-Teep has that fantastic, which came from, and the Razor have that pouch, which you put at the back and you can, carry stuff on. Diverite has a similar tech backplate, which you can clip stuff onto. So, just using various tools in your toolbox from Sidemount into the open single tank twin set realm. I mean, that's my take of it. And of course, cargo pockets on shorts, which we love. Stuff them as much as you can. Hey, that's a side mount pocket of yours.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Vish. Andy, how about you? Let's hear from you. So, what side mount techniques do we learn, or do we find out that we can then translate back when we're diving in Backmount?
I think what Vish said about actually side mounting stages and bailouts, it's something that I work with my back mount kit. I do dive back mount still sometimes, and there's no reason why you can't get your cylinders, your stages and decos on back mount, in trim with your body, and it actually makes a big difference to the back mount experience. You don't get that tank inertia of things rattling around when you need to maneuver. When you're doing a helicopter turn or trying to back kick, you don't have that rocking motion with the stage deco tanks. So you get that side mount experience where everything's into you, part of you. Using loop bungees, everything's snug into your body. It works really well. It can be worked really well. There's some slight differences to side mount, but it's just, for me, it was just a case of fitting some loop bungees onto a back plate, getting my D-rings in the right position on the waist belt, and I've carried 4 AL80s with back mount doubles. Carried 4 AL80 deco stage cylinders. At the sides and below my stages decos for technical dives, and it's an improved experience, definitely. If you've got the side mount experience, you can definitely improve your back mount experience by merging.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yvonne, what's your comments?
Much to add. One thing I would say for people who come for their initial side mount course, especially if that's the first time they're going into anything that uses 2 tanks, that's maybe a bit of a segue into technical diving, is often the first time that somebody really focuses on their diving. It's the first time that you're really looking at getting the configuration right rather than just workable, getting what Vish has said, the trim and positioning really figured out, and actually paying attention to that for the whole dive rather than just for part of the dive. So, and all of these things, if you then take them back into your back mount diving, whether it is on a twin set or whether it's just on a single tank, they're not lost skills. You're not, even if you don't fall in love with side mount, there's no reason why you shouldn't, but even if you don't, what you are picking up from that can really change the rest of your diving. It often then leads to people rethinking where they put these pointers, and making the Christmas tree better. Taking all the stuff, yes, absolutely, but finding sensible places for it. So there's a lot of things that come from side mount diving that we can take into any other diving, really. Then they're not going to be lost. It's not going to be wasted time or wasted money, whether or not it becomes your thing or not.
Right. So that brings up another question, kind of slight spin-off from that with side mount, it teaches us, or we learn, things that we didn't learn when we were diving back mount, or things we weren't taught when we were diving back mount. So would it be fair to say that if an instructor is a back mount stroke side mount and an experienced side mount instructor, as we've talked about, it's not just knowing a manual, it's about experience and practice. So an instructor that is experienced in both and teaches in both is probably a better back mount instructor. Would that be a fair thing to say, Andy?
Being equipment familiarity is part of instructing. So what you're most familiar with is you build up expertise and experience. But in terms of transferable principles, yeah, there's a lot. For one example for myself is teaching side mount. I teach feather drills and shutdowns, and that's recreational and technical side mount divers. And a feather drill is is where you can manipulate the valves open and close to breathe from a regulator when you've got a free flow. And you do it on your potentially, you train it on your primary tanks, but it's then a skill you've got for decos and stage tanks. And a couple of years ago, I actually had a pretty catastrophic deco failure. I had a diaphragm blew out on a 50% tank on the technical dive, on a real technical dive, and with students. And I was just able to feather breathe that deco tank and breathe from it and complete my deco and get up and then change onto the 100%, and the drama was ended. But that skill, I really honed that ability. It was just second nature when it happened. When I turned on my 50% tank, the first stage blew out. I could just feather breathe, and I knew approximately how much gas I was going to waste with the feather breathing, but I knew I could access that gas without having to change regs in real time in the water, change regs between tanks, or have to recalculate deco, or have to get gas from one of my students. I could just feather breathe that tank, and that's a skill that some tech back mount instructors might teach, but as a side mount guy, it's second nature. It's one of the core things we teach, and then that's one of the, I think, an example of one skill that I use for real. That if I hadn't been doing that as a side mount diver, I'd have been scratching my head solving that drama in any other circumstance.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Andy. Edmund, what's your thoughts from that point?
Well, I think Sidemount, when you're first learning Sidemount, most likely you are a recreational diver and you're interested into doing something more. So I think Sidemount, how the way it's said is, it brings you into a little bit of a technical diving. It gets you into the door about technical diving. So when you're doing a Sidemount course, you bought a lot of concepts from technical diving, but you're not just yet, but it will give you a lot of basic skills and fundamental skills about, buoyancy and trims and finning, which other courses or recreational courses will not actually teach you all that. So it's a good way to learn and start getting yourself looking into more advanced diving, and it will help you along the way, able to, whether you like it or not, you still have many choices. So Sidemount will kind of bridge the gap for you, and you can do a Sidemount course with very little entry requirement. And if you dive with a good experienced instructors, you kind of get you the door on the concept of what actually technical diving is. So it's a great way to get started, and it's really easy, and you are not doing any decompression. You are just learning skills and and finning. You're learning buoyancy. You're learning the concept of what is extreme trim, which I think in Sidemount, the point of doing Sidemount is you are in trim, right? So I think it's a great way to just experience something different and without getting into a more serious diving. Also, when you learn Sidemount, it also helps you because you just build along with the skills, and you will be doing like deco dive, you can do caves, you can do many things, and once you have a Sidemount background, everything you just built on it. So it's more progressive. You will get to where you want to quicker, and it's kind of like a concept where it's just so that you will get to dive more advanced diving, and it will get you to where you are, and you will already have some basic fundamental skills. So I think it's a great way for people who want to get into more advanced diving and want to learn more, even though you might not even know if you want to do technical diving, but the way how it's organized now, anybody can learn Sidemount, and it's very popular for recreational diver to get into some sort of improve and performance diving.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Very true. Very true, Edmund. Thank you. Yvonne, any comments on that?
Well, going back to your question, does it make an instructor a better instructor if they are capable of teaching both backmount and sidemount? Better is a big word. Maybe well-rounded, if I'm being diplomatic for a moment. Because I think what happens naturally when you're teaching is you're bringing everything to it. So you will make those comparisons. You might be teaching a sidemount course, but you will compare it to backmount because it just goes into the conversation. The student may ask about it. So especially I think when people are taking that first backmount class or that first sidemount class, they're still sort of questioning whether they've made the right choice, whether they should have chosen the other. The answer is often, unless you've got a reason. So you're saying, okay, cave diving is really what I'm aiming for, then there's a bit of a natural choice for sidemount. But if you're not sure about that yet, then try the different concepts. So if you have an instructor that teaches both or dives both and changes back and forth relatively regularly, you'll find that they can bring both of those things into the course. And everybody will have a preference. And I think most people on this panel will probably have a preference for sidemount, so we're a little bit biased. But we got there for a reason. I started out on backmount and sidemount was a little bit of an epiphany. It's like, oh, okay, right. But you know, people are individuals and we have the right to sort of say, I just like this better. It just, for me, for my personal diving, that just works better. So getting that training from somebody that can bring the two different things together will just give you a different perspective, I think.
Yep. And comes back to Vish's point again, we never stop learning, right? So Vish, what are your thoughts for making a bet? Does it make a better instructor to be both?
It like I was saying in the beginning, right? You want to have an instructor who can teach both ways, and because like Yvonne said, it's a more rounded learning. And as an instructor, you want to have a larger toolbox available to you, and maybe a few tools in the garage which you don't use regularly, but hey, they're there when you need it. I mean, you don't go around carrying a torque wrench in your pocket all the time, but it's there in the back of your garage for when you need to torque something. But you do carry a pair of screwdrivers or a small spanner whenever you need it. So that's how I compare sidemount and backmount, making an instructor more rounded and more developed in what they teach. Yes, a sidemount instructor can bring more to the table because most people today have started their journey on backmount. There are still a few people, very few, who have started on sidemount and gone straight from sidemount. I would say there's maybe 2 or 3 people whom I've heard of and seen, but everybody else starts on the backmount system and goes from there. So it does make a more rounded instructor. The instructor will be able to give you their experiences on backmount and talk to you about how it can come in and when you need it, especially when you need the real estate on your back. An instructor can tell you, and I think even some of the more hardcore agencies are now keeping a sidemount course as a more advanced level, when you have restrictions or something like that, which you newly can reach when it's like the pinnacle of diving for them, kind of, but for us it's like something which we like the most. But yeah, so it's not something that will definitely disturb an instructor. It shouldn't. I mean, the instructor should be able to teach both and develop themselves and enable to be able to use or translate skills from one configuration to another, and use the toolbox and use the tools in their garage as well when they do it. So that's my take. And again, learn from an instructor, or speak to an instructor who is experienced and can, teach you beyond and dives beyond what they teach and teaches beyond your course level. That's my take.
Great message. Yes, thanks, Vish. Right, we're kind of getting short on time, so my last question would be that Sidemount is new in the world of, or to most people is new in the world of diving. The last 10 plus years, it's kind of become more mainstream. So equipment has changed quite a bit in those times. And back in my day, I built my own equipment because couldn't buy any and that kind of thing. So how do we see, what's your feelings on how equipment is changing and where Sidemount is going, as we move forward? Is it going to change from what it is now, or is it kind of already at its peak? Yvonne? You're on.
Yeah. Can we send the question to TekDive and to these guys? Now, basically, if we take a look at where Sidemount comes from, where it goes back to sump diving and just finding a solution for something that doesn't have a solution yet, then I'm pretty sure that as diving progresses, as people are looking to explore longer caves, achieve more depth, then problems will come up that will need solutions. So yes, I think there will be gear advancements, there will be changes. On the other hand, though, Sidemount is such a personal thing, it's such an individual thing. I do think that there will always be room for building your own harness, for creating something that just works for you, because it does work for you, and maybe you then pass it on to your dive buddies, to your students, because it's something that you found just makes sense. So I think we're now at a stage where we have some really leading harnesses in the market that work really well and that work for most applications, that will work with steel and with aluminium tanks. But I'd be really surprised if there weren't more developments coming in the next 10, 15, 20 years, as more people are taking up Sidemount, as more solutions kind of need to be found.
Right. Andy, how about you? Well, what do you think the future may hold?
Yeah, I think in terms of kit design, the TekDive was the first rig that got away from the Florida style versus Mexican style of design. It crossed over between those two, and it's the first one that worked really well for steel or aluminum tanks. And I think it's step one on the journey. It's the best, but in my view, the best kit on the market at the moment for all-round side mount. But I don't think it's a finished product. There's going to be innovations to come with that. I think we're going to have more standardization. It's similar to what happened with Backmount, with Hogarthian style rigging, with the DIR philosophy. I think we're going to get a more systemic, a system-based view where the protocols and the equipment design matches a way of diving. I think that stuff evolves naturally, trial and error, and innovation by the leading proponents. Not to say that there's only one way to do it, but there's best practices that will evolve that everyone agrees on, and they become more and more comprehensive, and the differences become more specialist at a higher level, where people have unique needs. So I think the way we dive side mount will refine itself. The equipment's going to evolve from this crossover now between Florida and Mexico styles. I think the idea of Florida style and Mexican style for steel or aluminum is going to evolve itself away. There's no need for that anymore. Manufacturers need to understand that. And they seem to be catching on. I think side mount will also become more accepted in general diving. Going onto a dive boat or a charter or a liverboard, and hopefully more dive operators are going to become side mount friendly or side mount encouraging as well.
Great. Yep. Thanks, Andy. Vish, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both Andy and Yvonne. And one of the things which I have just to add on is everybody buys a side mount kit from the market, takes out some stuff and throws it away, and gets some stuff and adds on to it. So we all build our own side mount kit. I mean, you built it from scratch. We just take parts of ready-made kit and tinker a little bit and add on stuff. But so as long as modifications are going to happen to the gear, there is going to be change, and there's going to be some leading proponents, as Andy called them, people who dive a lot only side mount, and in specific areas, those modifications are eventually going to be taken by the manufacturers. And just give you an example, Ed Sorensen started off with certain modifications to certain gear, and it used to be in-house Ed mods would be sold in his shop, and it's now gone into mainstream side mount equipment. Similarly, the guy from I forget his name, I think he's also Andy, who does Sump UK, his D-rings and pieces of equipment are now, I think, are generally becoming mainstream. There's so many people buying them and so many people using them. I'm sure some manufacturer is going to just start making them. So these things are just going to constantly evolve and change, and constantly grow, and constantly we learn.
So meaning more things to learn, right? So your comment is consistently right, Vish. Never stop learning. Lastly, Edmund. So what would be your closing comments on where we're going with side mount?
I think, like Andy said, I think we are gaining more standardization about how a side mount should be, and because there has been a lot of different ways where people dive or concept or how they call it, forwarder style, toady style, or you can have many style, UTD style. There are many sort of different ways, but I think the trend will be more unifying and standardization. And I think we do have now more sort of international style side mount. I would not call it like Mexican style, because I think in terms of manufacturer, there's also a lot of development, because there are really the different equipment do make a big difference, and there are manufacturers that are specifically make your kit for side mount, and they design it that way so that it actually makes a big difference. Versus there are some manufacturers, they just kind of follow and they just make whatever side mount, and without really going into the details about what the side mount equipment should be. So you can really tell the difference. Is also when you are teaching and using the right equipment, sometimes it makes it so much easier to learn and for the student. In terms of development, there are lots of development in side mount, and also because like side mount rebreathers are getting very popular. We are talking about redundant rebreather now, and for doing exploration. So having a side mount rebreather and back mount, and they kind of merge together, and you can do all kinds of things. And I think that for technical diving, that is the future. Having a redundancy and having side mount, everything merge into something that at the end of the day, that's where the exploration, where you want to go, it's kind of become one, So there's still a lot of development going on.
Great, thanks, Edmund. Right, we're pretty much out of time, so thank you all, everybody. That's been very educational. So I think, at least to me, partly as well, some of the things that we've shared and learned. And back over to you, Nora.
Thank you, James, Andy, Edmund, Vish, and Yvonne for taking your time this morning to share with us insightful sharing on back mount and also side mount. I really like the last question where you talk about the technological advancement of where you see this trend is going. Hope we can talk a little bit more on that maybe in the next session perhaps. So to everyone that is tuning in, please do stay tuned to the next session happening at 1 p.m. with Gert Leroy on the topic on mastering free diving, how to free dive. So, like we really look forward to see you guys later at 1. And back to this particular panel, thank you once again. And I really hope to catch everyone real soon, perhaps in the real ADEX physical show, perhaps. We're not too sure when is that. Hopefully it's going to be in 2022. But in the meantime, everyone, please do take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you again. Bye.